Welcome to Fran's Friends, and join me in my crafting journey.
Oh, everybody knows you wanna be one of Fran's friends. The creative fun with fabric never ever ends.
Welcome to Fran's Friends. It's finally time to reveal my Mexican stork. What we did was we took a picture when we were in a restaurant in Mexico, and this is what the picture looks like. And what we wanted to do was to replicate this picture into the development of an AI-generated art doll pattern template. So this is the other picture of it, and this is what we came up with. This is the actual pattern that we developed, AI-generated. And then what we did was we enlarged the patterns, we developed the materials using canvas bag, we used acrylic paints, and this is the result.
Fran's friends. Fran's friends.
Now last year I did a whole video on what I called replicate, replicate, replicate. So if you go onto the website, you'll see what I did with a doorstop that I had for many, many years, given to me at Christmas time one year. And what I did was I replicated by remaking this mouse from the original pattern without tearing the old pattern apart. And this is what we came up with. So it's just by looking at something, taking the vision of it and making it your own. I know my dad was an amazing man, and he would go into a shop and say, oh, I'm not going to buy that because I can make it. And I think I got that from him. So when I was in Mexico last month, I was in a little restaurant, or on the resort, one of the restaurants. It was a Mexican restaurant. And I just happened to see a picture of this stork hanging from the ceiling. And I thought, oh my goodness, isn't that cute? I wonder if I could replicate that. So I took a couple of pictures of it, and here's another one of it. And I thought, how can I recreate that? And this particular piece, I think it was either ceramics, or it could have been, paper mâché that was painted with acrylic paints, and it just hung from the ceiling. And I thought, oh, how cute that is. So what I did is I thought, okay, we're now in a new technology, and let's play around with the technology. Everybody's talking about this AI. And what AI does is it creates, and some of it can be pretty scary, but I thought, how can I incorporate AI into productivity and vision into the crafting process? So after taking the pictures, what we did, my son and I, help from my son, we went to Gemini, and what we said is, please create a pattern for this Mexican stork. And it came out, and this is the pattern that they came up with. And I thought that pattern was absolutely incredible. It gave me a vision of what I could do as far as putting a three-dimensional project together of a Mexican delivery stork. So here's the body. They have the in order to make it 3D or three-dimensional, you have a gusset. And that's what making something not two-dimensional or flat into a three-dimensional project. It's either by using darts or by using gussets. And gussets are a phenomenal way to be able to increase texture and space for your project. It gave me wings, and the feathers on the wings, an idea. It gave me lower wings, a hat, a bow tie, and the legs, and then the beak, and then the eye positions. So we took that. It also gave us a listing of materials that you could use for the body, the head, the beak, the wings, the legs, and a basic construction step. So it's a valuable tool, and I'm going to try and use it a lot more in developing patterns. If you're taking a picture of something that you want to recreate, you can go to the AI and pull it up and get them to draft you a basic pattern that you can work from. Now, I didn't follow the pattern completely. I just took the basic concept of the pattern pieces and built my own. So I now have a finished stork, which I'll be excited to show you. So how I'm going to approach this project is I'm going to go through it step by step. Okay, what kind of media do you want to use? Now, this probably is either paper mâché or ceramic. So would I like to do it in a paper mâché format or in some type of a cloth? Or my media is usually using soft sculpture. So I've decided to go the soft sculpture route. If I had have gone maybe with a paper mâché, I could have used something like this dollar store, Easter egg. You put chocolates in it or whatever. And you could have used this as the body of your bird and then paper mache'd over top of it. But I decided not to do that. And I thought maybe I could use this particular mold as an insert for giving weight to the project. But that will come a little bit later down on the project list. So when you go to think about it, I thought, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? This was the actual pattern they came up with, and they said it was a Mexican delivery stork art doll pattern template. And I thought it was really amazing. It took the images of the picture, and it really did an excellent job on recreating a pattern. And I thought, okay, well, I need to create something that's a lot bigger. So first of all, what I wanted to do was I cut out all pieces of the pattern, and I looked at the different pieces, cut them out, the little pieces, and these are far too small, so I definitely have to enlarge them. But what I also needed to do was to determine what I was going to use to create the project. Now, if you go back into my Halloween crow pattern that I did a black crow, and it was done using a canvas bag. And I use a lot of canvas because what I find it does is it's very easily painted with acrylic paints. So I thought, okay, let's go with canvas bags. And my son's just brought me a whole slew of new ones. The other, it calls in the pattern for the use of felt. And I thought I will be using some felts in the pattern, but also I do like to use t-shirt fabrics. But again, in my videos, I always say that you need to stabilize your fabrics in order to give them strength and dexterity. So I use a lot of interfacings, different types of interfacings to give the materials, the canvas bags, even more strength. So that's what I was going to use. Color systems also is very important. What color combinations am I going to use? I like the blues that this particular one showed. So I thought, okay, but this looked fairly white, but I thought, okay, I'd like to use something a little bit more of an off-white color. And then how would I incorporate? I love the blue cap. So I would use blue in a felt or in this type of a fabric to incorporate into a hat and a bow tie. And also the yellow I found was really quite interesting. And that combination of the blues and the off-white and the yellows would be particularly stunning. So that's what I decided to use. So I picked my materials, my canvas bags, my felts, and my t-shirt fabrics, my thinking that I'm going to be painting the canvas bag, and canvas is really nice to paint with acrylic paint. So that's the first thing you have to do. So you have to sit and think about, what kind of a media you're going to use, whether it's the paper mache or whether it's going to be cloth, and then step by step work through your project methodically. So after I've done that, I decided, okay, what size of my pattern? And when I looked at this kind of egg-shaped thing, I thought that would be a particularly good size. So I modeled my thinking that I would make it about the size of this, which would give me a really nice, substantial piece. So in essence, when you got this little pattern, that definitely isn't going to give you that size for a finished product. So what I did was I cut out all the little bits and pieces, and I took those pieces to my computer and I enlarged them step by step. This was the enlargement of the base of the bird. I cut the beak off and I enlarged it. I think it was 150, but you can play around with that. But that still isn't large enough. So what I did, and again in my videos, I have one on changing pattern sizes by using your computer to increase the size. And this would be difficult to do because this is already almost a full size of your standard computer paper. So I thought, okay, then you'll have to go to the old method of increasing the size of your pattern by putting it onto, as an example, a piece of paper, or I use T-Vic, and then enlarging it with a ruler, going out and out and out and out, about a 2-inch all the way around, and it'll give you that increase in size. So each of the pieces had to be done that way. So that's a very time consuming. So it was about a 2 or 3 day project. And this is eventually what I came up with. This is the actual body that I wanted to use for the bird, for the stork. And again, that's a cutout in T-Vic. And what I did was I took this to my fabric, to my bag fabric, and I stabilized the back of it to give it strength, and then I cut out 2 pieces of it. I did the same with the wings. And this is the size of the wing that I ended up with. And that wing will be made out of, again, the canvas bag material, and then sewn and then created that way. So that's about playing around with enlarging the size of your pattern is really, really important. Other things too, as I mentioned, gussets. And it's important that you putting gussets in gives your project the 3-dimension that you're requiring. And this is what ended up to be the gusset that goes around from the tail to the underneath the head. So you have to play around with measurements, measure, and then cut, and then see if they fit together in your pattern pieces. So it's kind of a labor of love, but it's getting your tiny little piece of, here's your gusset, enlarging it on your computer, and then taking it, if you want it even larger, putting it into onto your T-Vic and enlarge it by hand. Now that we've got the pattern pieces sized and cut out the pattern pieces, we're going to take our pattern pieces to the fabric. Now, I mentioned I'm going to be using canvas bags. Now, if you see this piece of canvas, you'll notice that the edges are very rough and they fray, and it's a little bit loose and wobbly. So what we're going to do, as I always mention when you're preparing for a project, a term I use called stabilization. And what that is no matter what you're working on, if you stabilize the fabric using an interfacing, you're going to get a much sturdier fabric. And this is what I mean by interfacing. And this is an adhesive, sort of almost like a felty interfacing that I will be ironing onto the canvas bags. And this is what result you will get. This is the interfacing ironed on. It's nicely firmly attached, and this is what the canvas looks like on the other side. And if you notice, it's got a really nice demarcation here where you're not going to get a lot of fraying. So it makes your job for putting your pieces together so much easier. The other fabric that I do use a lot in any of my projects is an adhesive. This is a cotton interfacing. It's woven, And I buy this by the meters, and I use a ton of this. I don't think there's a project that I use without using some type of adhesive interfacing. And it certainly does make things a lot easier. So once I've done the stabilization of my fabrics, then I'm going to take my pattern pieces and I'm going to lay the pattern pieces onto the fabric, trace them out, and cut them. Now this is the actual T-Vic pattern piece that I made for the size of the bird that I want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, trace it out, and cut out two sides, one in reverse. So these two pieces will be sewn together. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I will be using gussets. So from this edge here, which is the tip of the nose, all the way down around the base of the body up to the end of the tail is going to be a gusset. So that will give your bird depth. The other thing we're going to do is I am going to put, the pattern doesn't call for it, but I'm going to put a gusset on the head so that I will have width in order to hold the little hat a little bit better, the one that I'm going to make. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a seam. And that seam is going to go from the edge here, because my gusset's going to go here. Gusset will be here, and then I'm going to sew all the way and 1/4 of an inch stitching all the way from the back of the head to the tail. Then I'm going to open that up, and that will be the base that I will be using. The next thing I'll do is we'll have those two pieces. What I had planned on doing was utilizing this aquarium-filled Easter egg thing as sort of like a stuffing. But when I went to try and do that, every time I did, it moved. So I wasn't able to use that. So I just had to use polyester stuffing to actually fill the bird. And it worked out okay because it still was heavy enough. So, you know, trial and error, you know, I've tried it. It didn't work. So you find a different way of solving your problem. So that's what we've done for the first step. The next step we're going to do is we have to, you cut out your pattern piece for the gussets, and then you're going to insert your gusset on this edge here all the way around. Now, what I do first to make sure that the gusset is going to fit, because sometimes you may have to make a little bit of an alteration, is I just clip it with some clips, and then with the gussets, you work from the gusset side, and you always use a running stitch. I use a blanket stitch to put the two pieces together to hold it before you sew your seam, and your seam will come all the way around. So you'll do one side, and then what I did with the other side of the gusset was I attached it only to a certain point, and then I left the bottom of the bird open so that I can actually stuff it. So very simple to do. It just takes a little thinking and a little playing around with it. But once you've done that, so we cut out the basic pattern for the body. Then we also had the gussets that we needed to put in, and then the wings, and then the tail wings, and then also the legs. And I'll go over a little bit more about how I did the leg pieces. So the embellishments like the bow tie and the hat are all done at the very end. And then I have to figure out what type of, what I'm going to use to create the beak. And once this has all been put together, then I take it, and this is what takes the time, is to coat it with an acrylic paint. And I used paints, and then I stippled it in a blue to give it some texture. So this next stage, we now have the body of the bird, of our stork, is now complete. What you do once you've stuffed the bird, and I spend a long time stuffing, you stuff, leave it, stuff, leave it. I've got many videos on my website that talk about actually the way that you stuff your bird or whatever project that you're working on. And then the way that you close, I use a ladder stitch for closing. And I do have a video that I have done on the website on closure of your project. So do check that out and, go over it through that video. Now, what's happened is we've completed the actual base of the bird. And then we have the wings, the legs, and to complete so that we have them all set for us to be able to construct and put all the pieces together. So this is what the actual size of the wing that I made. And again, it's a bit blurry, but it's been enlarged and it gives me the outline. Now I will make 2 of these, one for, which I would be sewing together, leaving an opening that I will turn it inside out, and then I will just sew little lines for demarcations on the wing, and then I will stuff it, close it, and then I have a nice fluffy wing to put onto my bird. Now this is the, as you can see in the picture, this is what it looks like. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And then this will be attached to the body. Now the same with the tail feathers. This is the pattern size that I'm using for the tail feathers. Again, cut out 2 pieces, sew it together, turn it inside out, and leave an opening. And then again, what I did was I put lines in, sewed lines in to give it sort of a body. And then I stuffed them. So the wings are all done. Then what I do is once I've got all those pieces put together and in one fell swoop, then I'll get to the painting. So the paint that I use is, I just go to the dollar store and I buy, I think I paid $1.50 for this, and I have a whole box of different colors. It's acrylic paints. They're easy to use. Just put them into a little dish and then I paint away. And I add water if I want to stipple and have it a little bit lighter. But the acrylic paints work out really well. The only thing with the acrylic paints is your project, you have to paint, let it dry, paint it again, let it dry. So that's where the time, it's time consuming. But these are excellent paints, that they're cheap and they come in multiple colors just at your local dollar store. So once I've done that, I've got my bird pieces all painted, and then I will start looking at putting everything together. So it's now the legs, I'll do one little video specifically on how I did the legs. But once you can see the painting coming along and your bird's got a body to it, and you can see that, oh, you're coming along in the process. So again, that's all the bits and pieces, the wings and whatnot that you need to put together to make your stork a reality. I'm going to move on to working with how to do the legs. And if you notice on the picture, the legs are coming along straight and then they curve upwards, and the body is of the leg is curved. So I would really like to reproduce it that way. And there's a way that you can do that. And what I've done is I've cut out 2 pattern pieces. This will be the top of the leg, and then this will be the joint, and then this will be the bottom of the leg. So that will curve up, and then we'll put a little pad on the base for like a webbed foot. So that's how I'm going to approach the legs for this pattern. And what I do is I cut out in my canvas 2 pieces, and then I just sew them together, turn them inside out, stuff them. And then what I do is I take a ball such as this is a wooden ball that with holes in them. And then what I do is I attach them just to the inside of each of the parts of the leg. And it's a very simple technique, and you can use it on any of your soft sculptures. It gives a really nice effect. And then what I do is I paint the ball, and these legs will also be done in the yellow. as well as the beak, and a vibrant yellow. It will really make it stand out, and the legs will be quite a predominant feature of the bird. So very, very simple to do. What you do is when you sew them on, you just put your bead in, and then the holes you just, I use 4 strands of heavy duty upholstery thread, and then just sew them into it. Once you've stuffed it, I put a little round piece of felt, just glue it inside to cover up the inside of your leg, and then you put your bead on. So very simple to do. We now have all of the pieces painted. The legs are painted the yellow, the wings are painted with the blue specks in it, the body's been painted. So now it's time to start thinking about putting the complete project together. So here's the picture, the AI picture of the placement of some of the parts. And in order to put the pieces together, you're working with canvas, you're working with a product that's been painted, so it can be a little difficult when you're trying to put things together. So what you need in the way of tools is you cannot work with any soft sculpture without the proper tools of a really good, solid doll's needle. The doll's needles do come in many different sizes for the size of your project. Now for this particular one, because the piece is so large, this is the one I will be using. It's also important to have an awl, and because the fabric is really hard because of the paint, I use an awl to poke into the fabric so that your needle will go in easily when you're trying to pull the pieces together. So those are the things. You also need a really good pair of needle nose pliers. And the most important thing is don't use just regular thread. Use heavy duty upholstery thread. Now this particular thread that I'm using, I will have 4 strands going through for each piece. So you use it, so it's going to be really good and sturdy. Now, one of the things that you need to do is you have 2 wings, one on either side of your body. You have your base wings for the bottom and either side. And then you've got your legs, but they have to be symmetrical. They have to be equal. So what you need to do is I will measure with a ruler, and here's the indications of where this is where the wing goes. So I will say find a point and measure down, put a needle in it or a pin just to mark it, and have it equal on either side, so that when you go to put your doll needle in, you've got them at equal parts so that they look even, because it looks terrible if you don't place them properly. Again, with the legs, you want to place them, find a marking, say from the base, maybe 2.5 inches up, and sort of kind of measure, like you'll see here is where the wing is. It just comes straight down. So you can probably measure from the tip of the wing there down to where you would put the base of your leg. So always take the time to measure. I use just a little pencil marker, and then you can always paint over it afterwards. So what I did was I put the wings on, really sturdy. You pull it through. I put 2 holes, and then I'll go through, bring the whole thing through, bring it back around the other side, and then I'll tie it tightly and then go around again a couple of times to secure the wings, and then also the same with the legs. What I also did with the legs was I also glued a section that I couldn't put the needle through because I couldn't get it to go in a curve, and I don't often use the curved needles. I find them a bit awkward. So that's basically what you do for the placement of your parts for your bird. So again, that's your body's done, your wings are all done, and now you're putting the thing together, and it's really coming together. So I'm going to talk about now how to do the beak and the eyes and for this project. Now, what I did is I looked at the pattern, and it gave me a good idea of what shape. Now, on this picture here, it looks like you could probably use one of those clothes pegs, a decorative clothes peg that you could paint. But what I decided to do was to use canvas. So what I did was I went to hard cardstock, and I cut it, folded it in half, and then I cut out a portion off the bottom to make it look like a beak. And this is the top of the beak with the point down at the bottom. Now, the bottom of the beak, I did the same thing with the angle coming upwards. So what I would do is, and this I did in canvas, and then after putting the canvas pieces, you paint them, and then you attach them by just gluing them onto your main piece. So this is basically what it would look like. And as you can see, you have sort of a beak effect. Now what I do is I paint the inside of the beak as well as the outside at least 2-3 times to give it the strength and the sturdiness. And then when I've actually put it onto the Stork, I've used a high duty gloss finish to really give it the strength and a little bit of a gloss. So that's basically the beak. I've done the beak the same color as the legs, so it ties the project together. Now with the eyes, I didn't like the look of the eyes. I think to me it looks a bit scary. So I wanted a little bit more of a subtle tone. So what I did was I took 2 of my wooden discs that I use for jointing, and I put a piece of foam. I cut out a circle and put a piece of foam over top, put a hole in the middle, and then I put an eye, the store-bought glass eyes, straight through, and attached it on the other end. And then all I did was take a piece of felt and do like a yo-yo. And I had cut a hole in the center and did a blanket stitching around it. And then I did the stitching, the gathering, and tied it tight to make like a yo-yo to tie it to the back. And then just all I did was to just glue them on. Very simple thing to do. I've done this particular, symbol or typical little job on quite a few of the different eyes, like on fish. My Pinocchio has this kind of an eye, and it's very effective, very simple to do. So again, more little techniques of things that you can do to embellish and make your projects even much more exciting. Almost the completion of my stork, my Mexican stork. The AI pattern generated by the AI, and how it came from a picture to the final production. Now, as I'm getting so close to the end, all I'm having to do at this point now is the stork is complete, is all the embellishments. The baubles, the hat, the little bow tie, the buttons, to finish him off, to give him the character that he really deserves to have. So I've made him a little hat, and I'll send you some pictures of that. I made him a bow tie, lots of my signature hearts. And then I'm going to, in the next video, show you the reveal, as well as his name. So thanks for watching.